So, good day, everyone. Again, my name is Naija Thomas. I'll give you a brief introduction of one of my presentations that I presented in my master's program. It is titled Non-Economic and Economic Barriers in Healthcare. This is the difference between economic barriers. You have non-economic and quasi-economic. These are the three P's of value-based healthcare, which it consists of patient, provider, and payer. One of the key components in those economic barriers consist of race and ethnicity. You have culture, language, and culturation, which one of the key components is that low health literacy, cultural barriers, and limited English proficiency have been coined the triple threat to effective health communication by the Joint Commission. One of the other things to notice that the less interaction with patient providers and healthcares is a extremely healthcare challenge that affects the system, the provider, and patients at a certain level. Cultural competence. So again, the goal of culturally competent healthcare system is so that services is provided at its highest quality of care to every and all patients in like regardless of race, ethnicity, cultural background, English proficiency, or literacy. uh, this is actually important to look at the social economic status, where we look at the assess of the income, your education, your occupation, and how all of these different factors are linked to a wide range of health problems that could consist of low birth weight, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, arthritis, diabetes, and one is the major one is cancer. Education. We look at education, we look at these three different components. We have patient, we have provider, and we have peer. When we think about patient, we think about the lack of education. When we think about provider, we think about the differences among education. When we think about a peer, we look at the poverty levels that's preventing people from of actually being having the ability to afford insurance or co-payments for treatment. So then because of that issue, it goes to Medicaid recipients. So when we think about low literacy, it makes it difficult to understand. You have prescriptions, you have illness information and insurance information. How are we ensuring that we have a better trajectory on literacy, understanding literacy? I know there are in certain hospitals there are I want to say um there are people in place to help with that. And so that's a great component that was added over time. But we also need to think about uh, education levels. How are we really bridging the gap for education level, low education levels? How are we really bridging the gap for poverty? How are we really looking at the spread of diseases and the preventions for patients? So let's talk about the barriers to responsive care. You have poverty, you have pros and cons. We can talk about the poor quality of interactions between providers and underserved patients. We can also talk about the complexity of healthcare systems. We could talk about the changes in policies and practices because that's needed for those barriers to achieve greater equity and to provide a more responsive care for persons who live in poverty. Let's talk about persons living in poverty, PLP. Um, we could define it. Its financial resources, the lack of financial resources, poor housing and environmental stress, healthcare teams powerlessness. We could talk about the health services used, low cost, is free, is unmet needs. So this is a great image from Henry J.